Hello. There's new bass strings on this piano, and I just can't get enough of them. Oh my gosh, my hand vibrates when I play them. Oh, thanks to the auction. We got that great light coming through the ceiling, and the piano's just working like crazy. Are you ready to Labor Day it like crazy? Let's stand up, and we're going to sing, "We Shall Not Be Moved." We shall not be moved. If you're joining us online, you can find the lyrics posted in the chat. They're up here on the screen. It's a zipper song. So once you get what it is for that time through, you can like kind of sing with each other, maybe even look at each other. It's very spooky, but you can do it. Here we go. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved. Just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. You got it? We shall not. You can harmonize. We shall not be moved. Just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. We're young and old together, and we shall not be moved. We're young and old together, we shall not be moved. Just like a tree that's planted by the water, we shall not be moved. Let's do it! We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved. Just like a tree that's planted by the water, we shall not be moved. The union is behind us, we shall not be moved. The union is behind us, we shall not be moved. Just like a tree that's planted by the water, we shall not be moved. You know it, let's harmonize. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved. Just like a tree that's planted by the water, we shall not be moved. We're fighting for our freedom, and we shall not be moved. We're fighting for our freedom, we shall not be moved. Just like a tree that's planted by the water, we shall not be moved. We can do this. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved. Just like a tree that's planted by the water, we shall not be moved. We're fighting for our children, and we shall not be moved. We're fighting for our children, and we shall not be moved. Just like a tree that's planted by the water, we shall not be moved. Let's do it! We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved. Just like a tree that's planted by the water, we shall not be moved. We are a land of many colors, and we shall not be moved. A land of many colors, and we shall not be moved. Just like a tree that's planted by the water, we shall not be moved. We're just about there. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved. Just like a tree that's planted by the water, we shall not be moved. One more time. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved. Just like a tree that's planted by the water, we shall not be moved. We will not be moved.
Good morning. Welcome to the Olympia UU congregation. Our community envisions an interconnected world that is loving, just, and healthy. We commit to live out our mission to welcome and wonder, embrace and empower, bridge and become. Thank you for choosing to join us today, either on site or online. You are always welcome here just as you are. Whatever beliefs sustain you, whomever you love, however you understand and express your identity, and in all the ways you are still becoming. My name is Ann Colbury. I prefer she, her pronouns, and I am a member of the worship arts team. I'm an older white woman with dark hair and glasses, wearing a bright coral top over a white shirt. Leading worship today is our affiliated community minister, Reverend Carol McKinley. Our director of community and faith development, Reverend Sarah. And Troy Fisher, our music director. Here are a few things to know about our service today. We are streaming live on Zoom and YouTube, and the service is being recorded. For those here in the sanctuary, you can follow the service by reading the song lyrics and mostly accurate but AI-generated subtitles on the screen beside me, or on your screen if you're online. We are a multi-generational community, and all ages are welcome in the sanctuary. Over here are soft chairs and toys, and you'll find both nursery care and a story program just down the hall in the classroom wing. Please choose wherever you feel most comfortable. We are grateful to everyone helping with the service today. Thanks to all who are contributing in visible and invisible ways, including office and building staff, kitchen servers, ushers and greeters, and our skilled tech team. After the service, everyone will have a chance to discuss reflection questions offered by Reverend Carol. For those online, we invite you to go to a breakout room for a virtual coffee chat, and for those here, please stay for discussion and fellowship in the Commons. And here are a few current announcements. The OUUC Choir resumes this Wednesday at 7 p.m. If you are interested in joining the choir this year, contact our music director, Troy Fisher, speak to a current choir member, or just show up for rehearsal on Wednesday at 7. Our Thursday night community dinners also resume this week. Everyone is welcome to share a buffet meal and fellowship in the Commons from 5:30 to 6:30 on Thursdays. Please join us and contact Reverend Sarah if you can arrive early to assist with prep. Next Sunday will be our annual water communion and backpack blessing service. If you plan to be on site, please bring water to share in this ritual. If you will be online or are away, you can leave a sample of water in the box outside the front doors at OUC, and those online will also be invited to show their water on screen. We'll add it to the bowl next Sunday. Also, if you are a student of any kind, you're invited to bring a backpack, a briefcase, a book bag, or have it on your screen to share if you're online. All will receive a blessing. Finally, mark your calendars for the all-church potluck picnic on Saturday, September 13th at noon at the Rose Garden Shelter of Squaxin Park. We encourage you to carpool and contact Reverend Sarah for more information. There is always a lot happening at OUC. Check the Tuesday email update or the website for the most current information. Now, let's open our our hearts and our minds as we prepare for worship. It is so good to be together. This morning, we join UU congregations around the world in lighting a chalice, the symbol of our faith tradition, with these words of the Reverend Florence Kaplow. In recognition of Labor Day, we light this flame to honor all work, including the work of our hands and backs, and gratitude for all the labors that support our world, and for all those who boldly continue the work of justice, equity, and freedom.
Good morning. I'm Reverend Carol McKinley, and I use she, her pronouns. Our opening words are offered by the Reverend Megan Visser. We enter this sanctuary for kindness and comfort, May worn hands and aching backs be healed. We enter this sanctuary of hope for equality. May those who labor to survive live to know justice. We enter this sanctuary of love and vocation. May our bonds of solidarity be strengthened. We enter this sanctuary of courage and friendship. May we proceed hand in hand toward freedom. Come, let us worship together.
And let's sing together again, this time out of the Teal hymn book, hymn number 1028, The Fire of Commitment. I invite you to rise in body and our spirit, and let's join in singing this amazing hymn. Such great lyrics. From the light of days remember, burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and holding spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our minds and souls ablaze, when our hunger and our passion reach to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of a flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and the future can begin. From the stories of our living rings a song both brave and clear, calling pilgrims still to witness to a faith of liberty. When the fire of commitment sets our minds and souls ablaze, when our hunger and our passion need to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the faith that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the dreams of youthful vision comes a new prophetic voice, which demands a deeper justice built by our courageous choice. When the fire of commitment sets our minds and souls ablaze, when the hunger and the passion reach to call us on our way, when the live with deep assurance of a flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. Wonderful, thank you.
Good morning. The story that I have for you today is a true story. More than 100 years ago, a steamship arrived in the harbor of New York, bearing hundreds of immigrants, and one big surprise for America in a very small package. Her name was Clara Limlick. She stood barely 5 foot tall. She was a teenage girl, dirt poor, spoke hardly any English at all. But she was a force. She had grit, and she had a strong sense of what was right and what was wrong. Now, almost right away, things felt wrong to Clara. No one would hire Clara's father, but they would hire Clara. Many teenage girls were working in factories, sewing in the garment industry. And they didn't get paid very much, but something was better than nothing to support Clara's family. So Clara gave up her dreams of going to school, and instead Clara went to work. From dusk to dawn every day, she was in the factory sewing. She learned the rules very quickly. If you were even a couple minutes late, you were docked half a day's pay. If you hurt yourself, you better not bleed on the fabric. There was a fine for that. And too many fines meant you were fired. Now, these work conditions felt very unfair to Clara. And one day, she heard from a man at the factory that the men were trying to organize a union to push back on these work conditions, to fight for better pay. But they weren't inviting any of the girls to join the union because they thought the girls weren't tough enough. That didn't seem right to Clara. So Clara started talking about a union with the other girls. Whenever things weren't fair, she would whisper, "Union." When somebody felt that they were treated poorly, she would whisper, "Strike." And one day, they did. They walked out. Clara led a walkout of all the girls from the factory. She was fired, but she kept coming back every day for the picket line. This was dangerous. The bosses hired thugs to come and harass or beat up the girls on the picket line. Clara was arrested by the police 17 times. Her ribs were broken 6 times. She hid her bruises from her parents, and she just kept coming back. But it didn't feel like enough. It was just one factory. Clara thought, we need something bigger. We need a big strike. We need to walk out from all the factories. So she went to a meeting of the union. She was very excited. A very famous union organizer was said to be speaking, and she was sure that they were going to call for a general strike. And she went to the meeting, and man after man gave a speech encouraging caution and moderation. No one called for the general strike. Finally, the big famous union organizer spoke, and Clara was excited again, but he also called for caution and moderation. So Clara called for the strike. From the front of the hall, she just started shouting out, mostly in Yiddish, "It's time for a strike." And the people all around her lifted her up onto the stage so she could tell everyone. And they did it. They went on general strike. It's known as the Uprising of 20,000. Women and girls, many as young as 12 years old, went on strike and walked out of the factories. And so we remember Clara, who shows us that heroes can wear skirts and the bravest hearts can beat in a person barely 5 foot tall. Thus ends our story.
Each Sunday, we engage in the spiritual practices of generosity and gratitude by joining together in service to our community and to something greater than ourselves. Together, we express our gratitude for the gift of life, the network of our relationships, and this spiritual community. While each of us has the power to share, when we combine our gifts to create this offering, we are able to make a deeper impact than any of us can alone. If you are a new visitor, you are our guest. However, if you choose to participate, your offering will be most gratefully received. This weekly offering serves 2 important goals. Half supports the ongoing work of the congregation, which is also supported by our regular pledges. The other half goes to charity. Most of this is shared with an organization that serves our community in harmony with our UU values, and a small portion goes to the OUUC Ministers Benevolence Fund to support more urgent needs of individuals in this community. Our Share the Plate organization for July and August is Garden Raised Bounty, or GRUB, our neighbors just down the street. This is the final Sunday service opportunity to support their important community mission and service. Stop by their table in the Commons after the service. Here's what they share about their work.
Good morning, Olympia UU congregation. I'm Carenza Mabwa, the program manager for GRUB's Growing Home Collective, and this program grew out of a series of Black community listening sessions in 2021 on how GRUB could better support the Black community around foodways, food history, cultural, and land. And as an affinity program led by an all-Black advisory group, the programming is by, for, and with the Black community. Participants get to experience the gift of connection and to relax and be fully present in the richness of cultural knowledge and skill sharing. We consider this a wellness antidote to the assimilation, minimization, and erasure that's often experienced living in the dominant culture. And impacts of oppression and white supremacist redlining practices are still present. This is a sacred space that we create where we're normalizing shared lived experience and expertise. Participants are Black members, alumni of GRUB's programs, partner organizations, and various resource networks we're growing locally and regionally. So from foraging wild plants to making herbal medicine and cooking, remembering ancestral foodways, celebrations, we grow food on the farm. Families and elders, individuals get to join in building power and leadership and healing their relationship to the land and food, as well as reclaiming untold contributions that Black folks have made to all of our story. So stories. Sometimes we hear Black people say they never knew how much they needed this kind of space until they arrived. Some children who've always been a minority in school look around and say, everyone is Black and they're beautiful. Kiddos get to pick and learn cooking and eat fresh herbs and veggies. And people realize they have skills to share and join us. So how can you help? Some of you attended our Juneteenth celebration. That's our one public celebration for all. And we threw down a soul food feast you don't want to miss next year. Please consider doing outreach or volunteering for it. Donate. Your gifts will go to our workshop costs and honorariums for the advisory group and guest presenters. Thank you.
May the offering now be generously given, as it will be gratefully received.
Thank you for your generosity in all the ways you share your gifts. This morning, we do what humans have done for all of our existence. We gather in times of worry and anxiety, and in times of celebration and joy. We come into this community bringing all that is on our minds and our hearts. Let us open our hearts to the complexity of life as we place stones in the water of community. You will hear a drumbeat. Allow its resonance into your body. It is the heartbeat of life, the heartbeat of community. Right now, I invite you to take a deep breath. Feel the air in your body. Feel the earth beneath us. Feel the warmth of connection. We mourn with the people of Minneapolis as we once again grieve the consequences of an unchecked gun culture. May the Minneapolis community know that we mourn with them as we call for appropriate action to limit gun violence. We send our love and care to our trans siblings around the world. May you know that we see you in your wholeness and we love you. We stand with you in demanding safety and care for all people in all bodies. May we embody our values of pluralism and justice and our mission of welcome and embrace. Judy Talley shares that her daughter, Cheryl Kremer, is in the hospital in Tacoma after a bad fall that broke bones in her back. She was admitted to the trauma center and has endured one surgery, waiting to see if a second is necessary. Judy asks for our prayers and healing thoughts for Cheryl. Judy, may you and your family know that we send our love and care as we hope with you for recovery and healing. Jim Brown requests our healing thoughts as he recovers from a fall and infection. Jim is getting needed treatment and hopes to return to his apartment soon. Jim would appreciate cards to help his spirits and his recovery. And you can find Jim's address in the Realm OUUC Connect or just ask at the office. Jim, we send you our love and care with hopes for a quick recovery. Last, Don Melnick shared that he had a planned surgery last Wednesday and is recovering well. He's getting good care and hopes to return home on Monday. Don, we send you healing thoughts with wishes for a speedy recovery. For those on Zoom, I invite you to share from your heart by entering in the chat. Those in the sanctuary can see your sharing on the screen, and it's shared with Reverend Mary and the pastoral care team. So now I invite you here in the sanctuary to come forward if there is something you would like to bring into this community. You may place a stone in the water as you hold your sharing in your heart. Let us hear the heartbeat of our community and reach out our hearts in love and care to all those who share. Place a stone in the water for all that has been shared online, shared from the heart. We'll place one more stone in the water for all that we hold in our hearts and that remains unspoken. Together we hold all that has been shared. May you feel yourself witnessed. May you know yourself beloved. I invite you now into a time of prayer and quiet contemplation. As we hold in our hearts and minds all those who shared with us this morning, let us also grieve those lost and injured in the Catholic school shooting in Minneapolis. May all the families in that community be held by us in this community in the face of widespread gun violence and division in our country. Let us do all in our power to work for unity and policy change, to take meaningful steps toward a world free from the devastating impact of gun violence. May each of us unite in our resolve to work for a safer, more peaceful world for our children, for our homes, for our brothers and our sisters. Amen. Now let us be together in a moment of silence.
I invite you to remain seated. Let's start seated. If you feel like you have to stand up, eventually do it. We're going to sing together Bread and Roses. As we go marching, marching in the beauty of the day, a million darkened kitchens, a thousand workshops gray are touched with all the radiance that a sudden sun discloses. For the people hear us singing bread and roses, bread and roses. As we go marching, marching, the battle true for men, for they are women's children, and the mothers speak again. Our lives shall not be sweated from the birth until it closes. Hearts starve as well as bodies. Give us bread, but give us roses. As we go marching, marching, unnumbered women dead, go crying through our singing, an ancient call for bread, small heart and love and beauty, their grudging spirits new. Yes, it is bread we fight for, but we fight for roses too. All right, you don't need to scream, we're just gonna la la la. Da da da
Our first reading is from an early 20th century speech by the labor activist, feminist, and free speech advocate Elizabeth Gurley Flynn. What is a labor victory? I maintain that it is a twofold thing. Workers must gain economic advantage, but they must also gain revolutionary spirit in order to achieve a complete victory. For workers to gain a few cents more a day, a few minutes more less a day, and go back to work with the same psychology, the same attitude towards society, is to have achieved a temporary gain, but not a lasting victory. For workers to go back with a class-conscious spirit and an organized and a determined attitude towards society means that even if they have made no economic gain, they have the possibility of gaining in the future. In other words, a labor victory must be both economic and revolutionizing. Otherwise, it is not complete. A labor victory must be twofold, but if it can only be one, it is better to gain in spirit than to gain only economic advantage.
Well, happy Labor Day weekend. Now, many of us see Labor Day as the unofficial end of summer, perhaps a last chance to swim at Tenino's quarry pool or to gather the neighbors for a backyard barbecue. But it's also the day that labor, that is all of us who work in offices, restaurants, medical and childcare centers, forests and farms, homes, the day that workers are honored for making our lives not only better, but survivable. Labor Day offers a time to reflect on the long struggle to bring equity and justice to workers. And for centuries, those who labor were invisible, disposable, once they could no longer produce goods or services. The late Pope Francis, in a call for worker justice, wrote, "The lack of labor rights is not inevitable. It is a result of a previous social option, of an economic system that puts profit above human, the effect of a disposable culture that considers the human being as a consumer good, which can be used and then discarded." Now, for decades, people have refused to be discarded and have worked for labor rights, for the dignity and humanity of all workers. And today, we recognize the dedication, the sacrifices of those who committed their efforts to labor movements, movements that often grew from the outrage, the cries for justice that followed some of this country's historic, tragic workplace events. The Shirtwaist Factory fire, the Pullman workers' strike, coal miners' wars in Matewan in the eastern part of the United States. Only after such catastrophes did some worker protections and fair treatment begin to emerge. And perhaps less well known are the labor movements and the inevitable conflicts right here in the Pacific Northwest, forest, mines, and fisheries. Activism that resulted in greater justice for workers and ultimately for justice that reached beyond the world of labor. And a leading figure in this activism was Elizabeth Gurley Flynn, whose words you heard in the reading. Now, I was introduced to Flynn in the novel The Cold Millions by the author Jess Walters. The Cold Millions is set in early 20th century Spokane, Washington, which became a battleground for struggles by workers calling for fair pay and decent treatment, for freedom of speech to voice their demands. And Elizabeth Gurley Flynn is a historic figure who plays a prominent role in that novel. Now, Flynn was born on the East Coast in 1890, And she was the daughter of parents who raised her with stories of the Irish freedom struggle and also introduced her to socialism. She became a very talented debater. She gave her first soapbox speech supporting socialism at age 15 and was promptly arrested for what were not only unpopular beliefs, but were seen as threatening, even revolutionary. Soon thereafter, Flynn joined the Industrial Workers of the World, known as the Wobblies, a union that challenged the existing economic and social order. The IWW was reviled as a radical, even dangerous organization. As a union for low-skilled, often immigrant laborers, it was seen, the people were seen as dangerous outsiders, and the union was seen as a hotbed, as revolutionary. Flynn was still in her teens when she began organizing IWW campaigns among miners, garment and restaurant workers in the eastern part of this country. But in 1909, the labor struggles of those working in the mines of northern Idaho and Washington inspired her to head west to work with Big Bill Haywood as the IWW began organizing in the area's miners. And much of that organizing work took place in Spokane. Predictably, the Wobblies were not welcomed by that city's government and law enforcement. Clashes occurred as the union took on the free speech fight over its right to hold public gatherings. Flynn was 19 years old, and she became the major IWW spokesperson during this struggle. She was widely known for her youth, her commanding presence, and her intelligence. Hers was a voice that always drew attention to the demands of workers and for their right to speak out to protest injustice. The Spokane Police Department, led by a chief who did not tolerate opposition to his rule, arrested and imprisoned Flynn and her followers. And from her jail cell, she began loud protests against the mistreatment of women prisoners by the male jailers. Soon after, her actions resulted in the city hiring its first female prison matron. Now, Flynn continued her advocacy for workers for free speech. Her persistence led to the end of Spokane's restrictions on IWW public meetings. And Flynn was unstoppable in her work for free speech and workers' rights. During World War I, she created the Workers' Defense Union to advocate for those arrested and imprisoned for violating federal espionage laws while championing labor causes. And Flynn became a founder of the American Civil Liberties Union. Now, following World War I, the Wobblies achieved even greater notoriety for their part in major deadly conflicts in Centralia and Everett, events that have become landmarks of American labor history. Flynn, because of and despite her advocacy for low-skilled immigrant workers, often was feared because she was revolutionary, and Flynn became part of the labor history. Joe Hill, a folk singer whose songs portray the struggles and aspirations of workers, and music was so important in the labor movement. Joe Hill paid tribute to Flynn with his song, The Rebel Girl, which is included in the IWW Little Red Songbook. Flynn remained a divisive figure, especially after she joined the Communist Party USA. Her passport was revoked because of her party membership, but her skill and persistence led to her successful appeal to have it reinstated. Now, like many outspoken, even radical labor organizers, Flynn was both idolized and condemned. idolized for her eloquence and effectiveness in demanding fair pay and humane treatment for those workers who alone had no voice. She was condemned for her political affiliations and her unstoppable advocacy for not only workers, but also for women's rights and for free speech. Like others involved in the justice movements, Flynn recognized that struggles for freedom are not limited to one cause or one time period, but are interrelated, existing wherever and whenever there is oppression, exploitation, and injustice. Flynn rightly holds a place in labor history and in the broader history of all those who challenge the status quo, all those who believe in freedom.
Today's second reading is from On Freedom by historian Timothy Snyder. We are told we are born free. Untrue. We are born squalling, still attached to an umbilical cord, and whether we become free depends upon the actions of others, upon the structures that enable those actions, and upon the values that enliven those structures. Then, and only then, with a flicker of spontaneity and the courage of our own choices. The structures that hinder are physical and moral. It matters how we speak up and think about freedom. Liberty begins with deoccupying our minds of the wrong ideas, and there are right and wrong ideas. In a world of relativism and cowardice, freedom is the absolute among absolute, the value of values. This is not because freedom is the one good thing to which all others must flow. It is because freedom is the condition in which all good things can flow within us and among us. Freedom is about knowing what we value and bringing it to life. So it depends on others, people we know and people we don't.
So what is the cost of freedom? Elizabeth Gurley Flynn, Big Bill Haywood, and nameless others who were condemned, jailed for their work for fair pay, for humane treatment of workers in the forests, on the farms and the waters here in the Pacific Northwest, they all learned that cost. Others in the clothing and meatpacking sweatshops, in the mines and on the trains across the United States, they learned that cost. Each of us today, whatever work we pursue, whether we belong to a union or not, must recognize and pay tribute to those doing that work, including those seen as radicals, disturbers of the peace, who face not only unrelenting criticism, but even deadly opposition from owners of canneries, factories, or mines, from governments threatened by any disturbance of the status quo. But disturbing the status quo is how rights for workers, fair, safe conditions in the workplace are won. Disturbing the peace and disturbing the status quo is why 10-year-olds no longer work in factories, why 14-hour workday became seen as inhumane, why today we can enjoy this weekend. Yes, you can thank the labor movement for the weekend. Workers' rights as the 19-year-old Elizabeth Gurley Flynn came to recognize, were inextricably tied to other rights. Without freedom of speech in the public square, the voices calling for fair treatment of workers were silenced, making possible the exploitation of immigrant laborers, of women and children factory workers. Without the right for dissident, even radical voices to be heard, nothing would change. Without women's freedom to vote, 1/2 of American workers were excluded from the political decisions that controlled their lives. Without ridding this country of the sin of slavery, the lives and rights of those held in bondage would never have been recognized. The yearning for freedom, freedom to realize one's potential to be full human beings, has been the driving force behind all liberation movements. As Timothy Snyder said On Freedom, freedom is the condition in which all good things can flow within us and among us. Freedom is about knowing what we value and bringing it to life. To do so will always depend on others, people we know and people we don't. Freedom also calls for a balancing act. The awareness that one person's freedom may limit the freedom of another. So how do we achieve that balance? Snyder tells us it's about knowing and honoring what we value. Freedom, equity, the ability to voice ideas considered radical, unacceptable, even un-American. Yet, what could be more in alignment with American values than to question the status quo, to question decisions that we sense, we know, violate the values we hold as people who yearn for freedom. This democratic republic was founded nearly 250 years ago by those who challenged the status quo. And each one of us has benefited from the efforts of our precursors who struggled to gain the right to speak out, to demand fairness, equity, inclusion, not only in the workplace, but within this country's social and political structure. The right to speak out against tyranny of all forms, chattel slavery, denial of the right of the accused to be heard in a court of law, the right to speak out against the deportation of immigrants who've only known this country as their home, or speak out against the firing of a government official who issues a report that contradicts what an administration wants to hear. Freedom means knowing what we value, then bringing those values to life. Values like freedom of speech, rights for women, including the right to vote and equal pay, support for the humanity and wholeness of all gender expressions, for the rights of workers to safe, equitable workplaces. Since the birth of this religious tradition in America, Unitarians and Universalists have stood up for values like these, for the freedom to speak up and act on those values, supporting justice and equity for working people. As early as 1838, William Ellery Channing, one of the chief architects of American Unitarianism, publicly supported the working man's associations that were the precursors to labor unions. And Channing's support for these organizations was rooted in his deep belief that all working people were the children of God, filled with human potential, but could not live into that potential until economic and social exploitation were overcome. The never-ending struggle for freedom and equity is never easy. When the status quo is challenged, it is inevitable that change will be opposed by many others. No doubt the majority of Americans in the early 20th century would have said they disagreed with the radical, often confrontational acts of the IDWW. Yet the Wobblies' agitation for the voices of immigrant and unskilled workers inspired safer labor standards in sweatshops and factories, in timber and fishing camps, for workers who had little or no voice, for women in the workplace. In the 1960s, not everyone in this country supported the strikes and boycotts organized by Filipino-American labor organizer and civil rights activist Larry Itliong and Cesar Chavez. Yet their persistent efforts led to the founding of the United Farm Workers, today a powerful voice for those who grow and harvest the food that feeds this country. Labor movements reviled by those in power as radical, even dangerous, brought about the changes that today we see as only right, humane, equitable, as the right thing to do. And efforts on behalf of workers go on. The passing of legislation in this state for greater protection of farm workers during periods of excessive heat, mandating private spaces in the workplace for lactating mothers, supporting local campaigns to boost the minimum wage to achieve a living wage. Advocates for workers continue this essential work for justice and equity. No, all who believe in freedom have never been able to and still cannot rest. May each of us gathered here in this Unitarian Universalist congregation this morning continue to honor and bring to life this tradition's values: freedom, equity, inclusiveness. May we reflect with gratitude for the outspoken acts of Elizabeth Gurley Flynn and all those known and unknown persons who enriched our lives with their unceasing support for workers' rights, dignity, and free speech. So, I hope everyone will enjoy this last official weekend of summer as you sit down to that picnic of barbecued salmon, corn on the cob, and potato salad. Just take a moment to honor the farm workers who grew the potatoes, the onions, the corn, those who fished for and filleted those salmon, all those who worked in the bakeries that made the French bread. May those workers all also be enjoying this holiday, this day of rest, this day of gratitude. Now let us take a moment for silent reflection.
I invite you to rise and let's sing together hymn number 157, Step by Step, the Longest March. Step by step, the longest march can be won. Many stones can form an arch, singly done, and by union what we will can be accomplished still. Drops of water turn a mill, singly done, singly done.
We extinguish our chalice this morning with the words of the social reformer and abolitionist Frederick Douglass. Those who profess to favor freedom and deprecate agitation are people who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of waters. The struggle may be a moral one, or it may be both moral and physical, but it must be a struggle. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. Amen. On this Labor Day weekend, may you go with a commitment to freedom. Go with joy and go with love.